You're listening to the Practical Tax Podcast with tax attorney Steve Moskowitz.
Welcome to Practical Tax. I'm Chip Franklin. That is Steve Moskowitz, tax attorney. Steve, this is fascinating where we are right now in the post-pandemic world, and you know the remote working and people kind of trickling back in. I know you're making a move for your employees to be better for them and safer and a new location. What's your experience with some of your clients and everybody else? Is remote working going to hang in there, or is it starting to go away?
Oh, no. Remote working is alive and well and will be with us for the rest of our lives. A lot of people prefer it. As a matter of fact, I've seen surveys where a lot of employees said, if I can't work remotely for you, I'll work remotely for somebody else. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because how much time do you spend commuting? Well,
Right.
first of all, you could use that time to work more or to play more, not to mention the cost of commuting, not to mention, you go into the office, you're wearing your fancy duds. If you're at home, you're probably in jammies or sweats. Not to
Fancy
mention,
does.
how about all those people that have kids and are either home to take care of the kids or close to school? If something happens, you can run right to school as opposed to being in the corporate world. And even if you left as soon as you got the phone call, it would take you a while to get to the school. So there's an awful lot of advantages. And another thing is that, for example, here in San Francisco, a lot of people have left San Francisco and said, well, why should they pay a lot of money for a small, not so hot apartment when they can move to another state, buy a house for what they were paying for rent, and also maybe move to a state that doesn't even have an income tax? And not to mention people that say, well, I can go to a resort area and work from there. Not to mention all the countries that are saying, hey, we'll give you a special visa, come and work
Yeah.
in our country. We'd just like you to stay here and
Oh.
spend some money in our hotels and our restaurants.
I think I read somewhere, Steve, like 75,000 Americans, professionals moved to Barcelona last year, and they're working from Barcelona, and many of them from California.
Well, talk about moving. If you move to Puerto Rico, you can legally avoid most of your federal taxes.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that with an expert. Michael Cups is from Active Ops, and these guys, they know this cold, and he's nice. It's nice enough to join us here. Michael, obviously, you heard this conversation. It seemed like we were moving towards the possibility of a 4-day work week, but then it kind of got flipped with the pandemic where people are working remote. First of all, do you concur with Steve that this is here to stay?
Oh, absolutely. We see it in our customers, and they're the biggest banks and insurance companies on the globe. And they're, as much as they try, those employees aren't coming back. So
that should be good for the business, right? I mean, guys, right? It's good for everybody, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when they actually sit and think about what that can do with that, whether it's real estate or their access to new employees that they can go recruit in areas they wouldn't be recruiting before, poaching from a competitor, all of those things are now at their discretion.
There's got to be downsides, though. I mean, there's psychological downsides, and then of course, just I would imagine managing remote employees is a new challenge.
It is and it isn't. We've had customers like Anthem Healthcare, for example. They were remote before the pandemic, and they just kind of sailed through the pandemic without change. It comes down to teaching your leaders and teaching your managers how to handle it. It's a different environment. Doesn't mean it's any less productive or more productive. It just means it's different. And some of those managers that grew up going to the office every day, it's tough to get them to see it a different way. So it's important to get those managers retrained and skilled in a way that they now know how to engage the employees the right way.
Do you guys know the story of Anthem and how they grew? I mean, this is a company that just changed the way medical billing is done. And they did it by hiring somebody on the 6th level, not on the top, but the whole business plan was the people that really know how to make this stuff work aren't upstairs. They're down on the bottom floor. And they went and they found this woman who was doing all the medical billing and was talking about all the problems with it. And so a few companies started to handle it on the efficiency, and everything grew from that. It is interesting. I wonder, with remote employees, do you get that kind of hey, can I stop and talk to you for a minute? I have an idea, or that. I mean, it seems to me that might be a little bit of a problem as well. And Steve, I'm going to ask you as well, because you have I mean, tons of associates. I mean, when you don't see them face to face, is something lost in that? Let me ask you, Steve, first.
You know, when you talk about face to face, we have Zoom, so it is kind of face to face, and you have to weigh like everything else, advantages and disadvantages, where you can do an awful lot through Zoom. And what about when you have employees on the other side of the world? What about when somebody really can't leave their home for some reason? They have small children. What about all the people that you can do business with now that wouldn't have before? For example, now people really don't mind that you're thousands of miles from them. Everybody's gotten so used to, a client can call us from Florida and say, "Hi, Steve, I'd like you to help me with my taxes," and it doesn't matter that I'm in California.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it depends on the business, right, Michael? I mean,
yeah,
It
certainly.
also, Chip, could depend on the person, because some people are just fun and happier in their homes. Other people want to go and physically be with somebody. It's a difference between being able to shake hands with somebody or not. But again, even shaking hands today, some people don't believe in doing that anymore. So
well, in the middle of all this, I was a stand-up comic. I've been since 1980, and I did a comedy show for the Punchline in a Zoom thing like this. Let me tell you, it was unsatisfying, to say the least. There are some things, obviously, that, salespeople will tell you that, medical sales, I got to come in, you got a seat in my hands, I got to talk to you, those kind of relationships. Let me talk about the 4-day work week. Is that dead now because everybody's at home? Are they going to give them a Friday off?
No, it's actually picking up steam again. There was an experiment going on in the UK with about 700 companies trying it out to see how it plays out, and then there will be results of that study. It's not complete yet, but it's actually catching more steam than it was before the pandemic, mainly because people now realize that they can work flexibly. And it doesn't have to be a Friday that everybody gets off. It could be some 20% of your work population gets Monday off, and the other 20% Friday, and then Wednesday, et cetera. So it can't, with flex schedules the way they are, the way we learn to work from home or work remotely, it actually is more convenient now.
And with other things too, like email. In the old days, if you wanted to speak to somebody, you both had to be available at the same time to speak together.
Yeah.
Now somebody can set an email at 3:00 in the morning, and somebody can answer it at 11:00 at night, and they've communicated. They didn't have to be together at the same time.
Hopefully you remember to turn the notification off on your iPhone so it doesn't ding at 3 a.m. I get that all the time. What about the financial incentives for a company to go to a 4-day work week when they're already remote? Steve, are there some financial incentives there? Obviously, you're still paying for health, salary, all the disability, all the stuff, workman's comp, all that stuff. Does it really benefit a corporation to go 4 days in your mind?
The benefit is, what are we talking about with employee satisfaction? If somebody says, boss, I'd really be happier with you and the job if I could work 4 days a week. I'll work the same number of hours. It depends on the person. Somebody would rather stretch it out and say, look, maybe their endurance isn't as great, and they would just rather have 5 days. Somebody say, well, look, I would rather work 4 days, 10 hours. And that was always a big thing with people that had a long commute. They say, wow, I don't have to spend half the day commuting. But, you can have a 3-day weekend, which is nice for some people. On the other hand, some people work 7 days a week. Some people say, well, you know what? I want to be able to take a longer vacation. So it adds more flexibility. If it's something that at least as much work can be done and makes somebody happier, then that's a good idea.
Michael, obviously it's a workers market right now with, unemployment so low. I gotta think to myself though that there's probably something in there for the worker to try. I mean, like what just Steve was saying, some of WeWork and some of these other companies, they love this open. They kind of the masters of this whole idea of like everybody feels part of a group. Are we? I know we're not there yet, but are we getting closer using things like we're talking with right now? This is pretty new. This format we're on right now, and I mean, is it all green pastures ahead for you in your mind?
It may not be for some employers and some managers because they're still relearning. And I think there's really three things to enable a fully flexible work week, whether it's 4 days or, as Steve mentioned, other modifications of it. One is you have to manage the resources and help employees understand how to manage their work. Just as Steve said, you still have a risk of burnout, but they need to understand they're working 10 hours rather than 8 hours a day. And the work still has to get done. So it's up to the companies and managers to allocate the work to the right people at the right time to get it done and still meet customer expectations. We also have to get managers back to managing instead of them trying to find data and look for things to do and get on a Zoom call because they didn't see that employee today. We need to teach them how to manage with data and how to get back to managing what really they're there to do. And then the third thing is leadership has to embrace it. They have to build an engagement model with employees that the employee doesn't feel at risk because of a proximity bias, that they're comfortable working wherever they're working. And as long as they get their work done, they're encouraged and part of the team. And those types of experiences, that type of retraining and skilling will enable this environment to continue.
And also, Chip, it depends an awful lot on the individual employee. A self-starter could actually say, you know what? I can get more work done at home than I can with people in the office. On the other hand, you have the other extreme where somebody, is always, if the boss isn't watching, I can watch a movie instead of working. So yes, there are certain people that need to be watched, and those type of people, you're probably better off not hiring.
Do we need
And
to
there's other
reteach?
people who do the same work, whether the boss is watching or not, and that's the kind of person that I'd want to hire.
Michael, do we need to kind of retool the way we teach management in college and in grad schools?
Yeah, absolutely. They may be catching up because we're seeing that just shift already naturally. But the reality is managers are taught to with their eyes and ears. And their eyes and ears now are different mechanisms. It's data that comes in through systems, it's dashboards, it's Zoom calls, it's whatever. It's not walking out on the floor and seeing your staff and making sure they're looking at your watch, looking at them, and are they there at the right time? It really shouldn't matter if we're measuring outputs and rather than inputs. Then if the work's getting done, as Steve mentioned, you want those self-starters, those people that will get the work done, and you don't really have to motivate them. You say this is what we expect this week or this day or this month, and they will go get it done. And that's when you have a really healthy environment because then they're free to go do what they need to do, whether it's with their kids or family or et cetera.
For those that are listening to us on the MP3 version of this, this is Practical Tax with Steve Moskowitz. Our guest is Michael Cups from Active Ops. Last question here, because this is one that I think that we've been hearing about since 2008 when President Obama was elected and started talking about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. Would a single-payer health plan by the government be supported or resisted by most Fortune 1000 companies? Do you guys have any insights or guess on that?
I would say it depends an awful lot on the motivation of the company. If the motivation, it's like for my employees, I bought them the best healthcare because I want them to have that, and I wasn't looking to save money on it. I want them to be well taken care of. And being a tax attorney, I've opposed the government my whole life. And I just don't trust them to do the healthcare. And you look at the way government does things, and I mean, look at the VA. Look at the VA. People are dying because they just can't be taken care of. So, and I'm a firm believer in private business. As far as a single payer, some employers might, if it's less expensive, some employers might be inclined to go for that. But as an employer, I wanted the better health care for my employees. I didn't take the cheaper one. I took the better one.
Well, I have a PPO too, but it seems to me the government's already in there, and it's getting them out is going to be trying to get a bird out of your house, without killing it.
And Chip, I don't know about the corporate's view on a single payer. I really don't know. But the other thing that might get missed in that transition is all the wellness programs that the companies and the health insurance companies come up with to help the employees outside of just general basic health care. It's making sure they're looking after their mental wellness or their physical wellness and things like that. So companies would have to find a way to replace that. Part of what we do is also provide well-being metrics as part of our solutions for remote work and managing that thing. And it's extremely important. And I think if you went to a single-payer government system, corporations would still need to find a backfill for those types of programs that play a massive role in overall wellness. And the motivation for employers is if they can reduce sickness and attrition because of well-being, then they're more productive.
That's great stuff. Michael, will you come back again with us, please?
Would love to. Enjoyed it.
Great
Thanks
stuff.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much.
You're listening to the Practical Tax Podcast with tax attorney Steve Moskowitz.